The first punch landed when I was 16. A sharp crack against my jaw that sent me sprawling across the locker room floor. Ethan Caldwell, all sharp edges and cruel smirks, stood over me, his shadow swallowing the fluorescent light. By senior year, I'd learned to dodge his fists, but never his words. They cut deeper, always finding the soft spots I hid from the world. Now, at 25, I stood in a dimly lit lawyer's office in downtown Portland, Oregon, staring at the same Ethan Caldwell, who looked nothing like the boy who'd tormented me. His dark hair was longer, curling at the nape of his neck, and his eyes, still that piercing green, held something new. Regret, maybe, or desperation. He slid a contract across the mahogany table, his voice low and steady. "Marry me, Lucas. 1 year. I need this. And so do you." I laughed, bitter and sharp, the sound echoing in the sterile room. Marry him. The guy who'd made my high school years a living hell. The one who'd mocked my quiet voice, my too bright smile, my everything. But the numbers on the paper didn't lie. A trust fund worth millions, locked behind a clause that demanded Ethan be married by 26. And me, I was drowning in medical debt from my mom's cancer treatments, the kind that ate through savings like wildfire. "I'm not your charity case," I spat, shoving the contract back. "It's not charity," Ethan said, leaning forward, his gaze locking onto mine. "It's a deal. You get half the trust fund, enough to clear your debts and start over. I get my freedom." Freedom. That word hung between us, heavy with implications. I didn't know what chains bound Ethan, but I saw them in the way his shoulders tensed, the way his fingers twitched against the table, against every instinct screaming to run. I picked up the pen. 1 year. I could survive Ethan Caldwell for 1 year. The wedding was a quiet affair, just a courthouse ceremony with a board officiant and a witness who smelled like cheap whiskey. Ethan wore a tailored suit, his jaw tight as he slid a plain gold band onto my finger. I didn't look at him. Couldn't. Not when my heart was pounding with a mix of rage and something I refused to name. We moved into his sleek apartment overlooking the Willamette River, a place that screamed money and control. The first night, I stood in the guest room, staring at the bed that wasn't mine, the walls that felt like a cage. Ethan knocked, leaning against the doorframe, his tie loosened and his expression unreadable. "You don't have to stay in here," he said. "There's space in my room." I snorted, crossing my arms. "You think I'd share a bed with you? After everything?" His face flickered something raw, something hurt. "I'm not that guy anymore, Lucas." "Prove it," I shot back, slamming the door. But Ethan didn't let me retreat. He was everywhere, cooking breakfast in the mornings, leaving coffee on the counter with my name scrawled on the cup, asking about my day like he cared. It was disorienting, like stepping into a parallel universe where Ethan Caldwell wasn't a monster. I hated how it made my chest ache, how his small gestures chipped away at the walls I'd built. One night, I found him on the balcony, staring at the city lights. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing a scar on his forearm I'd never noticed before. "What happened?" I asked, nodding at it, my voice softer than I meant. He glanced at me, surprised I'd spoken first. "My dad," he said quietly, "after I came out. He didn't take it well." The confession hit like a punch I hadn't braced for. Ethan, the golden boy, the bully who'd ruled our school, had been hiding his own scars. I didn't know what to say, so I stood there, the silence stretching between us like a fragile bridge. Work kept me sane. I taught art classes at a community center, pouring my heart into kids who reminded me of myself, quiet, unsure, bursting with dreams they were too scared to chase. Ethan started showing up, dropping off supplies or lingering in the doorway. watching me sketch with the kids. "You're good at this," he said one day, leaning against a table littered with paintbrushes. "You always were." I envied that. I froze, my pencil hovering over a sketch of a willow tree. "You envied me. You made my life hell, Ethan." He flinched, his eyes dropping to the floor. "I know. I was angry. At myself. At my dad. At everything. You were so unapologetically you. And I hated how much I wanted to be like that." His words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. I wanted to scream, to tell him he didn't get to rewrite the past. But something in his voice stopped me. It was the same vulnerability I'd seen on the balcony, the crack in his armor that made him human. That night, I didn't slam the door. I left it open, just a crack. The days blurred into weeks, and Ethan's presence became less like a storm and more like a steady rain, persistent, softening the hard edges of my resentment. He'd leave notes on the fridge. Small things like, "Try the new coffee blend," or, "You left your sketchbook open, love the tree." I told myself it was part of the act, a performance to make this fake marriage bearable. But my heart wasn't listening. It raced when he laughed, a sound I'd never heard in high school, warm and unguarded. One evening, he dragged me to a local fair, claiming we needed to look like a couple for his family's lawyers. The air smelled of cotton candy and fried dough, and the lights from the Ferris wheel painted his face in soft golds and blues. He won a stuffed bear at a ring toss game and handed it to me, his fingers lingering against mine. "For you," he said, his voice low, like he was afraid I'd reject it. I took the bear, my throat tight. "You don't have to pretend when no one's watching." "I'm not pretending," he said, and the weight of his gaze made my chest ache. We rode the Ferris wheel, the world shrinking below us. At the top, with the wind tugging at our clothes, Ethan turned to me. "I'm sorry, Lucas, for everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know I mean it." I looked away, the city lights blurring through unshed tears. "Why now? Why care now?" "Because I see you," he said softly, "and I can't stop seeing you." The first time we kissed, it wasn't planned. It was late, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the city outside. I'd been sketching in the living room, and Ethan was reading, his glasses slipping down his nose. He caught me staring and smiled. A small, hesitant thing that unraveled me. "Stop looking at me like that," I muttered, my pencil stalling. "Like what?" he asked, closing his book and leaning closer. "Like you." I couldn't finish. "Like you love me." He reached out, his hand brushing my cheek, and I didn't pull away. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like we were both afraid it would shatter. Then it deepened, desperate and hungry, years of pain and longing pouring into it. When we pulled apart, I was trembling, my walls in ruins. "This doesn't change anything," I whispered. But it was a lie, and we both knew it. His family wasn't as easy to win over. His father, a cold man with Ethan's eyes but none of his warmth, showed up unannounced one Sunday. He looked at me like I was dirt on his shoe, his voice dripping with disdain. "This is the best you could do, Ethan. A marriage for show." Ethan's hand found mine under the table, his grip tight. "It's real," he said, his voice steady. "He's real." I didn't know if he meant it, but the words burned through me, leaving me raw. After his father left, Ethan didn't let go of my hand. He pulled me close, his forehead resting against mine. "I won't let him hurt you," he said. "Not ever." But the doubts lingered. Was this real? Or was I just a means to an end? The trust fund loomed over us, a shadow neither of us could escape. I started noticing things: late-night phone calls Ethan took in hushed tones, papers he hid when I walked into the room. One night, I found a letter from his lawyer, mentioning a clause I hadn't seen. If the marriage dissolved before the year was up, Ethan would lose everything. I confronted him. The letter crumpled in my fist. Is that why you're doing this? Keeping me here like some trophy to secure your money? His face fell, the color draining from it. No, Lucas, it's not. Then what is it? I shouted, my voice breaking. Because I can't keep pretending this is real if it's all a lie. He stepped closer, his hands reaching for me. But I backed away. It's real, he said, his voice cracking. God, Lucas, it's the realest thing I've ever felt. I wanted to believe him, but the letter burned in my hand, and the past burned in my heart. The weeks that followed were a tightrope walk. Ethan tried to bridge the gap, his touches softer, his words more careful, but I kept my distance. The letter had cracked something open, a wound I couldn't close. I spent more time at the community center, losing myself in paint and charcoal, trying to drown out the questions in my head. Was I falling for him? Could I trust him? One night, I came home to find Ethan on the couch, a photo album open on his lap. It was old, the pages yellowed, filled with pictures of a younger Ethan before the cruelty, before the scars. In one, he was laughing, his arm around a boy I didn't recognize. Who's this? I asked, sitting beside him, my curiosity winning over my anger. My cousin, Jamie, Ethan said, his voice thick. He was like us. He didn't make it. The weight of his words settled over me. What happened? His parents found out he was gay. They sent him away. He took his own life. Ethan's voice broke, and he closed the album. I hated myself for so long. Lucas, for being scared, for hiding who I was. That's why I was so awful to you. You were brave in a way I never could be. I didn't know what to say. The Ethan I'd known was a storm, all rage and sharp edges. This Ethan was a man carrying ghosts, trying to make amends. I reached for his hand, and he held on like I was his lifeline. The community center's annual art show was my escape, a chance to focus on something other than the chaos of my heart. Ethan insisted on helping, hauling canvases and hanging lights, his presence steady and warm. The kids adored him, calling him Mr. Ethan and tugging at his sleeves for attention. Watching him kneel to talk to a shy girl about her painting, I felt something shift, a quiet certainty that this was real, that he was real. After the show, we walked home under a sky heavy with stars. Ethan stopped suddenly, pulling me into an alley lit by a single street lamp. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice urgent. The trust fund, it's not just about the money. My dad's holding it over me to control me, to keep me in line. If I don't do this, he'll ruin everything I've built. I stared at him, the pieces falling into place. So this marriage's to protect your company? Yes, he admitted, his eyes pleading. But it's more than that now. You're more than that. I love you, Lucas. I think I always have. The words hit like a wave, pulling me under. I wanted to believe him, but fear clawed at me. How do I know this isn't just part of the deal? He cupped my face, his thumbs brushing my cheeks. Because I'd give it all up for you. The money, the company, everything. Just say you'll stay. I kissed him then, hard and desperate, pouring every doubt, every hope into it. The alley faded. The world narrowed to just us. And for the first time, I let myself believe. But reality has a way of breaking things. A week later, I found an email on Ethan's laptop, left open by mistake. It was from his father, threatening to expose the marriage as a sham unless Ethan agreed to his terms that included cutting me out entirely. I confronted him that night, my voice shaking. Your dad's going to ruin us, isn't he? Ethan's face was pale, his hands clenched. I won't let him. I'll fight him. Lucas, I promise. But promises are fragile things. The next day, a tabloid ran a story, Caldwell Ayre's fake marriage exposed. My face was plastered across the internet. My past dragged through the mud. Ethan's father had followed through, and the world was watching. The fallout was brutal. Reporters camped outside our apartment, their cameras flashing like vultures circling. Ethan's company stock plummeted, and his father's smug voice was everywhere, spinning lies about how I'd manipulated his son for money. I wanted to run, to disappear, but Ethan wouldn't let me. We're in this together, he said, his hand gripping mine as we faced the chaos. I'm not losing you. He fought back, holding a press conference to tell the truth not just about the marriage, but about his father's abuse, his cousin's tragedy, his own journey. I stood beside him, my heart pounding, as he looked into the cameras and said, Lucas isn't just my husband. He's my home. The words broke me open, and I knew then that I loved him too. Not the boy who'd hurt me, but the man who'd fought to become someone better. We moved to a small coastal town in Maine, leaving Portland and its ghosts behind. The trust fund was gone. Ethan had walked away from it, choosing me over his father's control. We bought a fixer-upper by the sea, a house with creaky floors and windows that rattled in the wind. It was ours, built on truth instead of deals. One night, as we lay in bed, the ocean whispering outside, Ethan traced the lines of my palm. Do you ever regret it? He asked, his voice barely audible. Signing that contract. I turned to him, his face soft in the moonlight. I regret a lot of things, I said, but not you. Never you. He smiled, pulling me close, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged not to him, but with him. The past wasn't gone. It lingered in the scars we both carried. But we built something new, something real, and it was enough. Years later, at the community center's art show, I unveiled a paintinga rooftop under a starry sky. Two figures standing close, their hands brushing. The kids crowded around, asking who the figures were. Ethan, standing behind me, his arm around my waist, answered for me. They're us, he said, his voice steady. Two people who found each other, even when the world tried to keep them apart. The painting sold that night, but I kept the memory of it, of us, etched in my heart. We'd signed a deal to save ourselves, but in the end, we'd saved each other.